Hey guys, this is Dunk again. How's your day? Mine's pretty cool. I have this cold spec here of the Multishot, and this is a special snowflake basically, and I call it Permafrost because it's permanently shooting cold multishots. And as you can see, the resources, they're not dropping. They're not dropping at all. And as long as you don't go so high in the greater rift levels that you have to shoot really a lot of multishots, you will never ever get starved of hatred. And that's also the reason why there's no generator in the bar down there. Using a generator and focus and restraint, it feels like a waste of skill, a waste of time to just use the generator once in those low levels. And so I've tried to find a way to remove that for something good and for something that gives movement speed. You can see there's shadow power in as well, and the most special thing you see here is the shield around the character. Like a small blue bubble around it, and this shield is actually keeping two buffs active that you would otherwise lose constantly all the time. Because if you run fast like that, you just cannot prevent getting some kind of damage unless you use a shield. And there's only one option where a demon hunter can actually use a shield in a spec like the Unhallowed Essence. You can see the rift is almost down now already, and I'm just talking like 1.5 minutes or so, and it will be down in just a few more seconds. And then I can show you this build and what is so special about it. It's really extremely powerful in low greater rifts, up to 60 or something, depending on the augments and the paragons, whatever. And also for bounties and Torment 10 farming, it's extremely good. Alright, but what is it all about here? That's a nice clear time here, 135 in G50, not even on a perfect rift. And what's the spec? What's so special about it? You have seen there's no focus and restraint, rings look different, but the main change here to most of the multi-shot setups that you can see out there is that it uses everything you can get in Unhallowed Essence for movement speed, other than the gems, but the gems, like Boon of the Horde, that doesn't work in greater rifts. And the Wrath of Lightning, it's conditional, like you only get it when you hit something, and it's not adding damage in the Unhallowed Essence set, so it's a wasted thing. Alright, but what do I do here? I do have the Crown's buff belt, which adds movement speed unless you get hit, and then you lose that for 5 seconds. And in the cube, the next thing, I use Pride's Fall. Same thing, just for resource cost reduction. You get resource cost reduction unless you get hit. And this getting hit is something that you just cannot prevent in speedruns. You just get hit, like you get damage from poison pools, you get damage from Molten, you get damage from some ranged guys that are just shooting at you and you just jump into the spear or whatever. You basically don't take any damage at all from that, but still it's enough to lose those buffs unless you have a shield around you, and that shield, that's actually coming from the Molten Wild Beast Jizzard. And other than that, other than providing the shield, it's not doing anything here, because you just usually don't get damage at all, because the shield is just soaking it in, and it refreshes automatically because you're not getting damage. You don't lose life. That means that you don't get damage. And then the shield refreshes and refreshes, and it keeps your movement speed up, and it keeps your cost reduction up in the Pride's Fall. And that is something really, really cool, because that means that I have ultra speed. You have seen that in the short gameplay section. You have very, 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 very high speed, and you don't lose that speed. You don't lose anything here. And I don't use focus and restraint. I don't use a generator because of that, because of the high cost reduction that you get. And this is actually enough for anything up to G60 and even G70, I think, if you augment your gear and if you optimize it, like I don't have a Hellfire, you can go up to G70. Okay, but go to detail. It's Unhallowed Essence, of course. It's not 6-piece in the gearing, it's only 5-piece. I use the Frostburn as gloves. You could theoretically also use Andariel's Visage in the helm, but you cannot get that with Socket, Dexterity, Crit Chance, Multishot, and Cold Damage. It doesn't work. You have to lose one of those. And so the Andariel's is, I think, the weaker option compared to a very good Frostburn like this one. Other than that, I use shoulder, helm, chest, Actually not a very good one, but since I don't know how many 100 hours I don't get better ones like that. Pants, boots, same thing, no all-res, but whatever. I have just the other 5 items here. I do have also the Warzichian arm guards for movement speed, of course. I use Yang's recurve, and this one is also something special because look at the cost reduction, it's 55%. And why is that possible? Because usually it only rolls with 40 to 50%, but it can still individually roll a 10% roll additionally on that. And I got lucky in the drop, and so I have 50% on the Yang's cost reduction roll and another 10% on the random roll, and that means it's 55% summed up. And this is really, really powerful. If you combine that with the Pride's Fall that I have in the cube, the things barely cost anything at all. Alright, rings and amulet. Amulet, here you have seen that it's a very, very cool Eye of Etlich. Ancient doesn't have to be ancient because it's not Legacy of Nightmares. A Hellfire amulet would be better, of course, but I don't have a Hellfire amulet that can rival this, and so I just use the Eye of Etlich. And the rings, Convention of Elements, of course. Very cool one as well. That's basically what you want to have because you need some cooldown reduction. And a Stone of Jordan. And this is not a very strong one, but it's still extremely powerful. It got cold damage, dexterity, and damage against elites. And the very big thing here is a secondary, maximum discipline. And here's some information. Blizzard seems to think about changing the Stone of Jordan for the next patch. There was a Nevelistis was doing like posting something in one of the threads in the Battle.net forums. And this might mean that it cannot roll discipline after that anymore, or will be a completely different ring. And so if you like Unhallowed Essence, try to get your hands on rings like this, or even better ones where you don't have dexterity but crit damage or crit chance or something like that. Try to get those. You might want to use them in some future patches, and then it might be impossible to get them anymore. So just try to grab your hands on those. Alright, and the gems, Molten Wild Beast here, as I said, for the shield and keeping up the buffs. Bane of the Trapped, of course, and Ace Stone of Vengeance. Those two are just too good to pass as a Multishot Demon Hunter. Okay, I was on the bow, that's a very good one. I also have a Deadman's Legacy here. It's unrolled because it's pretty cool like it is. It's not perfect, and whatever I rolled, it will not be perfect. I just keep it like that. Okay, that's for the items. Go back to the cube a short moment. It's Dawn here. Just like all Demon Hunter specs, I have to use Dawn somewhere. And the Ring of Royal Grandeur, of course. I use this here because there's actually not a single other ring that would provide us with any buff that is needed for the lower runs. Avarice Band doesn't work in Greater Rifts because there's no gold dropping. Elusive Ring is completely unneeded. Immunity Amulets are also not needed for those levels, and yeah, maybe As of Joan, but you have seen things are just dying way too fast. And so this is the best option for damage, and using Frostburn with that. You could theoretically use Hexing Pants as well, but Hexing Pants add 25% damage, and this is additive damage to the damage that you get from the Multishot here, and so ultimately it's weaker than what you get from Frostburn, because it's also sometimes it seems to be a little bit bugged, and you cannot just stand still and smash down the Rift Guardian. You have to move constantly, so this is at least the same damage on Frostburns, and it's much more comfortable to use. Okay, and that's for the gear, and let's go to the skill. Prep Invigoration for more discipline, and it also, like, you lose some discipline if you vault around. Okay, barely see it here. You can see you lose it if you vault a lot, and then you can just refill it because you just have that. Okay, and Multishot Wind Chill, and there's something special about that rune, and that's something that many people don't know or are not really aware of, and that's not only the 15% increased crit chance that is really cool, but it says enemies hit are chilled and have the crit chance increased to them, and that means you do not have to use Thrill of the Hunt, for example. It's not needed. You don't need Thrill of the Hunt, you don't need Ice Blink, you don't need anything to slow it. You can just do it with Multishot Wind Chill. And additionally on that, this applies even to the first shot. If you're going with a spec that uses Thrill of the Hunt, it's only the second shot that actually gets the full buff from the monsters being chilled. And this includes Cull the Weak, slow the chilled enemies, and it also includes the Bane of the Trapped. So yeah, that's pretty powerful, especially on levels where you're one-shotting stuff. So this is, for fast farming, this is actually the superior option to Arsenal. And it also has some additional advantages here, like you don't need Thrill of the Hunt or anything, and you don't need ballistics. Of course, the fire one with ballistics here, more damage on rockets. The fire one is more damage on single targets, but this is more damage on the full screen. And you don't need more damage on single targets. You have seen the Rift Guardian kill that was extremely fast. You don't need anything else there. Alright, and then Volt Tumble, of course, extremely cheap with all the cost reduction. Shadow Glide for even more movement speed. And in very high density situations, you don't even need to use Volt. You just press Shadow Power to trigger Tactical Advantage, and then you run like a maniac. And you don't lose the aim that you have, that you sometimes lose when you use Volt. Very cool. Vengeance Seath, of course, this is mandatory for anything that uses resources up. Companion Wolf, you can theoretically swap that out for anything that you like, because the buff is not that big, but I don't think there's any option that is really worth considering. Passives, you have seen Tactical Advantage for movement speed. Yeah, there's still a Hot Pursuit, movement speed as well, and I don't lose any damage here because I have the other damage passives here. I have Ambush, which adds 40% more damage. That's multiplicative until the monster is below 75%, and in the lower levels this is just like a one-shot to most monsters. And then there's Cull the Weak, instantly procced by Multishot, so this is really powerful, the combination of that. And there are some more damage passives that you could theoretically use, like Steady Aim or Archery or stuff, but they are additive, just like Hexing Pants. They're additive on the multi-shot damage that you have on the quiver, and so they're not very good. You could use Blood Vengeance, but you have no resource problems with this. Could use Single Out or anything, so actually all the skills here, some of them are pretty nice, but you don't really need them. And that means that you don't have to farm a perfect Hellfire amulet. It's perfectly fine to use any amulet that you get that has cold damage and crit, or whatever you just get. It's not that important actually. And so this is why I really like that spec. It's not very hard to gear, because you can also use something else than Frostburns. It's very easy to get the items. You don't need to have Ancients everywhere, and yeah, it's so powerful. It's really powerful. And additionally, you just don't have to re-gear if you're doing Torment or Bounties or low Greater Rifts. Setup just as it is here is just fine for that. So you jump in and play, and that's really cool. That's something that I'm missing in some other specs. Alright, I hope you enjoyed it, that setup, and hope to see you next time. Bye.